Okay, back again. I, as usual, I've came across a very interesting discussion in the last day or so, and it's I don't, I look at a lot of these different sources, a lot of different people. I don't agree with everything that I hear everywhere I'm looking at it, and sometimes some of the podcasts that I look at, frankly, um, you know, I don't like the direction they go in general. I don't like everything they entertain because sometimes they can just because they're content creators, right? So they're just trying to find something to put on their program that they aren't particularly offended with, and maybe they think is intriguing. I'm a little bit more concerned about what actually is shared because I don't think we need to be wasting our time thinking about trash. So I try to give you stuff that is worth, considering in your life. And this is one of those occasions. There was a discussion with Dr. Wesley Huff, who, if I saw him in other places, if I saw him on the internet anywhere, I think I'd watch him because he's an engaging guy, and he is, talks about the history of the world in a very nuanced way, and not trying to hammer anything over any particular idea on to you or the viewer or the listener. He's just giving out information and interpreting in logical ways, etc. So I'll be sharing that video. You can check it down below and listen to him before yourself, and there's other videos with him talking about different things. But in this case, he's talking about the ancient gods, and you know, once again, as I keep repeating in other videos, I've watched plenty of stuff. Okay, and there's certainly been certain ideas that have been shoved down my throat by the Learning Channel or the History Channel or whatever, PBS, whatever. And one of those is this notion of how Egypt was like the civilization that influenced other things instead of other things influencing Egypt. Same thing with Mesopotamia, influenced other things instead of Mesopotamia being influenced by uh, historical incidences, etc. Certainly, where does Rome and Greece come from? They just appear, in our history books. They just sort of showed up. The way we see history is that let's see. Well, first there was the Babylonians, and then there was the Assyrians, and then there was the Egyptians, and then there were some scuffles back and forth between those folks, and then the Greeks showed up, and maybe the Greeks were before the Egyptians sort of were there and then not there kind of thing. But then there was the Greeks, and then after a while there was the Romans who were there forever, were here forever, and then finally the Roman Empire fell apart, and then all these little nation states popped up in Europe, etc. And then there was Britain. And I don't remember hearing a whole lot about Portugal or the Netherlands, Holland, although they were powers, right? We took because for the New World we had to deal with Spain. I would figure if we weren't in the United States, they might not even have dealt with Spain. But anyway, so this guy, the question gets raised about the gods uh, uh, and that involves the gods. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but he talks about the various gods. And if you now, I've done significant study on gods of the old of Mesopotamia and Egypt, etc. I'm not an expert, but I've done enough research to know that what you find is like you'll have a god who's a fertility god who in one society who is a fertility god and a rain god in another society or things like that. They'll add on different societies or add on different things, but these gods seem to evolve, and it looks as if, from what I've seen, it basically started like out of Mesopotamia. Those are the oldest ones we know about. And so those gods, the people, as they moved from there across the Eastern Mediterranean area, and I guess into Europe as well. But in our case, the way our history goes, we tend to go to the Eastern Mediterranean first. And so these gods got different names, a little bit different characteristic, but primarily, if you were the chief god, who's the chief god of Mesopotamia, in Arcadia, etc., Sumer, whatever? Who's the chief god in what we now call Canaan or Palestine, and who's the chief god in Egypt, etc.? But there seems to be an evolution of how this works. And one thing I thought, in order to talk about the evolution of how things works, because you might not really think that makes any sense. You might think that, well, everything came out of Africa, and that's the way and these different cultures just all were raising up languages all by themselves, and etc. I think this is really interesting. You may not can see it very well, but this is shows the relationships, and I'll put it right here. It shows the relationships between pre-Hebrew lettering and the modern alphabet, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And it starts up here with what they call Proto-Sinaitic, which is called Paleo-Hebrew by others. It's the same language. It's like what do you want to call it? What fits your sensibilities the best? And if you don't want to have any relationship to it being possibly Hebrew, then we'll call it Proto-Sinaitic. Okay, and that's what they're calling it. And then it comes down to Phoenician, and the Phoenicians were sea peoples who came right along the coastline of Palestine, etc., ancient Canaan, ancient Israel, etc. And then it comes down to ancient archaic Greek, archaic Latin, which are both Latin is archaic, is dead, Roman, and then modern Latin, which is also dead. I'm going to come in here close to this. I want you to look at how similar, how these things moved from how they evolved from one state to another. And you can see very much a relationship in those letters. Let's move it on over here. You can see a relationship in these letters as you move from the Paleo Hebrew all the way up to modern Latin. And I mean, there's a little bit of difference here and there. And of course, as you get to the end here, you see that, hey, somebody started adding a few more letters onto the alphabet. Anyway, I think that is a clear evolution of letters. You can see a clear evolution. We talk about evolution in science, where they have, there's these gaps. Well, in between, there's something that must fit in the gaps. We don't have any evidence of anything in the gaps. This right here is the way evolution works. Okay, now that's all there is to it. So you can see how those languages evolved, and likewise, I'm trying to make the argument that these gods, they evolved. Okay, what the various societies, as they got their own personalities, their own cultures, their own unique aspect of cultures. Another good example of this is of how this works out is the Santa Muerte. Santa Muerte is is an unofficial Catholic saint, a saint of death. It's not officially accepted in fact, it's condemned by the Catholic Church. But what happened? The conquistadors came over to the New World, and they conquered the natives, and the natives had a festival that had a goddess who was the god of, let's see, the Aztec goddess who was presided over the festival of death every year. This is an Aztec goddess, and they of course conquered the Aztec, and then the Catholic priest wanted to install a Catholicism, and they encouraged everybody to take on or to celebrate what we call All Saints Day. Okay, so I mean we celebrate Halloween, right? But the church is celebrating All Saints Day, and what happened is over time, the culture of the Aztecs, the culture of the Native Americans, they took that All Saints Day and they came up with their own saint of the dead, and now they have a cult, which is the Santa Muerte cult. Okay, that's an evolution, going from taking two things and merging them and merging cultural things. And you can see in the Far East, you can read. You don't have to believe in the Bible, although it reflects all kind of historical truth and evidence in it, which is constantly, repeatedly, over and over, and there are new ways all the time by archaeologists that what's in the Bible is actually historically things were happening that way. Kings were the kings, etc. So, if you want to study Josephus, it doesn't matter, any other historian or secular historian or archaeologist, you want to study, you go ahead and do it. You're still going to, the point I'm trying to make is, we know that these armies came through this, ancient Israel, Canaan, and came through multiple times. And so clearly, and took people off into captivity, and just brought in their own culture, their own way, brought in their own gods, etc. So over time, that all gets all meshed together and evolves into different kind of things. And people call, their god, maybe it was that, like, for let's say example, Baal. Baal might have been some little god of a hometown of a little bitty community, 5,000 years ago. But it's with all this back and forth going on, with some army coming in from Mesopotamia, they're bringing in this gods who were from Samaria, and of course they go right on down into Egypt and then to Crete, etc. So this is the way it works. I want you to take a look at what Wesley Huff has to say. He's entertaining and informative as all get out. But these are the kind of things that happen, and how we can come up with gods. So the gods, Zeus and Jupiter, we've always, for a long time, people have said, oh, it's the Romans just assimilated Greek culture, and they just made the Zeus into Jupiter. That's something that's been accepted for 100 years. Nobody's argued that so much. But the Egyptian god Amun, Amun-Ra, that's the chief god in Egypt. Baal is a chief god in Canaan, etc. And these are all the same gods, and he goes into I won't go over his entire speech or try to say what he's saying, because I think it's worth it for you to take a listen to him yourself. But he's informative, and you learn something about how the history of the world works. So take a look at him, and please take a moment. Please subscribe if you like, and make comments. Tell me that, Mark, you're full of it, or right on, Mark, whatever you want to do. Have a good day.